Oh, hello. Welcome to the very first Grab the Mic Live. I'm Vic Elizabeth Turnbull, founder of Mic Media, and we are a podcast production and training company. We're a social enterprise that works with the social impact sector, or as I like to call them, the good eggs. And the idea behind Grab the Mic Live is very simple. Now, there's loads of not-for-profit podcasters doing brilliant, interesting, innovative things, and I want to show them off. I want to show the world, and more specifically, our corner of the world, our not-for-profit corner of the world, the good egg corner of the world, the other good egg podcasters out there, to inspire you for you too to grab the mic and get podcasting. So every month or so, I'll invite some of my not-for-profit podcasting. I need to get used to saying that, don't I? Not-for-profit podcasting buddies along for a grab the mic chat, talk about how they grabbed the mic and got podcasting. And I am dead chuffed to welcome, talking about good eggs, I've got two good eggs here with me today. I've got the very first Grab the Mic Live guests. It's Helen O'Donnell and Liam Nolan from the Children's University charity, and they are buddies of mine. They are clients of mine, more specifically. Helen's the CEO and Liam's their head of communications. And we're going to hear how they grab the mic with their podcast, Children's University Live, as a way for them to at the start, well, they'll tell us all about, do you know what? I could wang on for ages, but I'm going to hand it over to you, Helen. For those of us joining today, not including me, could you give me the lowdown on Children's University?
Oh, yeah, okay. So, gosh, I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, so we are a charity that was set up as a social mobility charity. And in its simplest form, we are all about encouraging, tracking, and celebrating learning that takes place beyond school. So anything that happens after school, lunchtime, weekends, holidays, clubs, anything that happens in local communities, museums, theatres, libraries, etc. We are all about getting young people from as early an age as possible, so really from 5, if they're out and about with their parents, getting them engaged in that sort of learning that is informal and is fun and happens outside of school, but which we know has real benefits in terms of kind of educational achievement and personal growth and development. And the social mobility aspect of that is really, we know that children from more advantaged backgrounds get to do that sort of stuff and therefore get to really benefit from it. But there's a lot of kids from a mixture of low income families, from areas where there aren't a lot of activities happening. So we know we have issues around rural areas and coastal areas. There's a lot of kids out there who don't get these sort of opportunities or aren't encouraged to take up these sort of opportunities. And so we're all about encouraging them to get involved. And we track what we do and we celebrate, what they do, and we celebrate what they do in terms of an awards structure and certificates and graduations and all sorts of things that happen. So it happens up and down England, in Scotland, in Wales, and we have some international partners that run children's universities as well. We have about 112,000 children and young people a year who get some sort of children's university award. And we've been on a kind of path over the last couple of years as well of kind of taking what was a paper-based kind of awards and recognition system and turning that into the digital world, and we're continuing that with that, and hopefully by next year we'll have opened up Children's University to any child anywhere through an individual subscription model. And yeah, so we're all about learning beyond the classroom, and we're all about trying to ensure that every child out there gets to fulfill their potential through that sort of learning.
Fabulous. Now, talking about turning things digital, one of the steps you took to turning things digital, Liam, was starting a podcast in 2019. So what was the impetus of starting that podcast?
Oh, here we go.
Cast your mind back.
We ran a conference for we work, Helen and I work for the Children's University Trust. So we're a small charity. But we work with a network of organisations that deliver Children's University in their local areas. And we were organising a conference, and I think it was between about 50 and 100 delegates. And we wanted to pull together conversations with some really interesting organisations, interesting people, and really kind of get people aligned strategically with where we were going and what we were doing. And as we were, putting together the lineup, it seemed a real shame to think that the content that we were going to be delivering was just going to be there within those walls, interesting notes taken, lots of thoughts happening, and that being it. So we got in touch with you at that point. We were sharing an office space, and it seemed like a really sensible thing to do to record the podcast, record the conference, and release it as a podcast, which is exactly what we did. Hence the name Children's University Live. And I think we started with six keynote addresses from our conference. And we used that to sort of trial how it would go. And here we are.
Here we are.
Can I just add a couple of things to that? I was just going to say it was around October 2018, something like that? Was it the
2019? I think wasn't it?
I don't know.
Well, there's been that bloody pandemic. I know.
With the pandemic, so maybe it was 2019. But it was the first conference that the Children's University had done for a number of years, probably about 4 or 5 years. And I think we were mindful that we wanted it to be very different to how conferences have been in the past. So they'd been very kind of traditional format in the past, and we wanted to do things differently. So the podcast idea, was part of that, kind of doing things a bit differently, a bit more quirky. And also, of course, we've got this huge network, and people, are dotted around all over the country. And actually, the reality is some people can get to us and be with us for a face-to-face conference, and some people just can't. And we just didn't want to lose that learning and that sense of enthusiasm in the room that people were getting in the moment from the key speakers, but those people who couldn't be there weren't gonna get. And so it was a great way to share that with them.
And also a way to make your money go further as well, I imagine. This is so very often we do conferences, or we spend a lot of money or a large portion of our funding to do a massive conference or an event, and then come 7 o'clock, it's gone.
Well, absolutely. And I think ours was 2 days, wasn't it? And I think it's gone. But, you've made a really good point there. I had a meeting yesterday with somebody who is on the board of Children's University in Australia, which is run out of the University of Adelaide. He was in Manchester. So I met with him, and we were chatting all things education, all things widening participation in higher education and social mobility. And we got chatting about the Social Mobility Pledge, which is led by Justine Greening. And, immediately as he walked out of the door, I just went, oh, do you know what? We did a podcast with Justine Greening. I'm going to send him the link to the podcast. So that's 3 years later. We're still getting, bang for our buck out of it.
And I'm going to play a clip now, actually. Those chats are still relevant.
Absolutely.
It's okay, so we've had a pandemic since then, and no one was going to predict that was going to happen.
Just that small thing.
Just a little thing. But the principles of what they're talking about, and especially this guy I'm going to play now, Saeed Acha. I'm going to play a tiny clip of it, but this is the sort of atmosphere and feels and vibes that happened at that conference. I'm going to play it. This is the first time I've shared anything streaming, so I want a big thumbs up if you can hear it. So let me just figure out my buttons and do this. Oh.
And I think it's a duty upon me to show others that you can still be you and do well. And it comes down to confidence. My journey can be replicated. It starts with confidence, and the crucial things that help define and build confidence and what today's young people need are passion, opportunity, people, and resilience. And the Children's University, 56 partners in 66 local authority areas, breaking into another 18 in the next few years. The potential that you all have in that network is immense. And the impact that you can have on the lives of young people can be really game-changing. And I think that no matter who you are, no matter what seniority you are, we all have the power and duty to deliver on all of these. Thank you very much. I'm going to take some questions now from Helen.
Thank you so much, Saeed. Thank you very much. I'm really interested in what you were saying about, confidence and imposter syndrome. I had the private school education, went to an independent school.
It's like it's like watch again, isn't it? Because even in the pre-days before the pandemic, you were forward thinking about how can we spread our message and how can we spread the benefit of our conference to people who are at home and can't come. So the podcasts are really accessible in that way, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you know what? I've kind of teared up a bit listening to just because it evokes so many memories of that. Actually, I think Saeed gave the keynote address at the conference, and it was hugely emotive and hugely impactful. And people in the room were really, really taken with what he said. I mean, the amount of positive messages we had coming back after that were incredible. And actually, it's still as, I'm sure if you listen to the whole thing, it's still as emotive now as it was being in the room. And I'm sure, lots of our networks still share that. They still talk about it. They do still talk about it. So, it's had an immense power and kind of impact on people.
And something also there is a legacy piece as well, in that you both made a decision not to share everything. So you didn't. There wasn't every single thing there that we recorded and podcasted. But as a legacy piece for potentially, if you're going to produce any more conferences, to show partners the breadth of what's possible at a children's university conference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think we did make the right decision, didn't we, not to share anything? Because you know what it's like when you're at a conference. Some things work with slides and visuals and things, and they just don't translate well, do they? So I think that was the right decision there. Sorry, Liam, I kind of cut across you there.
No, I was just going to say, I think Saeed's speech was a really good example of what really made this work as a podcast. Because I think for us as an organisation, I mean, you just heard him talking about some of the facts and figures about Children's University, which is great. But he's got a really interesting personal story. And I think for us, when you've got a room full of delegates, we work with organisations that have whole teams working on Children's University, but the nature of these things, they can only afford to send 1 or 2 delegates to an event. Whereas something like this, even just looking at it as the original kind of list of delegates, you've got people who are then able to share, this is what I heard, you need to hear this guy talk, you need to hear this, which is exactly what people were doing with Saeed's speech. And it's great. And I think that's, for us, it really widened the number of people within our own networks that could hear that, but then also beyond that, we're out and about. We're on, I want to list everyone, Audio Boom, Spotify, everywhere. I'll leave you to do the plugging there.
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You're on all the major podcast platforms.
There we are.
But that's a potential audience, and is an audience of thousands, and that's more, I won't say eyes, but more ears on the wonderful work that Children's University does as well. So it's amplifying you as well, isn't it? And your mission and your values. Now, so the conference happened, and that was great. That was brilliant. But the podcast didn't stop there. Then you didn't have another conference because of the big bad pandemic, but the podcast evolved, and that's okay. Podcasts can evolve. And so tell me its purpose now.
You're head of comms.
I'll tell you what I think it is. And then I'll hand over to Helen. I think for me, it's recognizing that people, well, there's a few things at play here. I think for me, it's really easy doing comms to get bogged down in the written word, getting, audiences' eyes on things. I know full well that I get an inbox full of reports, articles, everything that I know I should be reading. And do I always read everything? No. Do I want to? Yes. I think podcasting is a brilliant way to just it's another way to share your ideas, your thoughts. And I think as well, people really respect faces of people. It's a great way to go, well, this isn't just an organization talking. This is a person. This is we're a person-led organization. And, we're all really focused on our mission. And I think it's a great way to show that there are passionate people at the heart of this. And it's a great way to get that out there. And I think that's within the organization and with the organizations and people that we speak to. But that said, I don't feature on the podcast, so I'll hand over to Helen to hear what she thinks it's all about.
Yeah, it's me who has to listen to the sound of my own voice all the time, and I hate it.
How did on that though, Helen? Has that improved? Have you?
What, my being able to cope with listening to my own voice? No,
Yeah.
I hate it. When I popped in at the end of that Saeed bit, no, I hate it. It's horrible. Yeah, so it's a really weird thing, isn't it? I've always hated it. Yeah, I mean, I think we use the podcast now partly to amplify our own voice as an organisation, but also to, I think, really support the network in terms of internally understanding why we're doing what we're doing and helping them get those messages out. So I think it's helped us in the sense that, we talk a lot about social mobility. We talk a lot about education and attainment. We talk about the importance of that and the power of informal learning in terms of, having an impact on that. But that is just us as an organisation kind of speaking out into the darkness almost, isn't it? And actually it's given us a real opportunity to put a different slant on that in terms of they are conversational pieces in the main, our podcasts, with people working in those fields. And so it's giving that Children's University voice and piece of that jigsaw, but in the wider context. And so it's not just Children's University talking about how brilliant this stuff is. It's engaging in a conversation with other people who are serious players out there in terms of those fields, talking about that. And I think it's also helped us with our network internally. It's not just us saying to them, it would be really good if you talk to your schools about X, or if you talk to, or if you were able to go out and have conversations with your local authority or whoever it is. It's actually, given them a really good kind of think piece, I think. And I think it's enabled the network to hear those strategic messages and really understand where their work fits in the kind of bigger picture, and also then be able to use that to go out and have those strategic conversations and amplify their own voice locally. I hope that's what it's achieved anyway. That's kind of what it's meshed into for me.
Yeah, there's a few interesting points there. Well, there's one about audience, and you've got a great idea of who your audience is, and you talk directly to your audience. It's primarily the network to inform your network, and then secondary, other people that are interested in the future of education and social mobility issues. The second piece there is the content and how you're being unique in getting that message across to your network. Not, as you were saying, not just saying, "Hi, we're Children's University, we're brilliant, have you tried this?" You're getting that messaging across in an interesting way. We're bringing other people into that conversation as well. Let's play one of those interesting people.
Can you pick a bit that's not got my voice?
No, it's always got your voice in it, I'm afraid. And it is the lady we mentioned earlier, it's Justine Greening. Let me just flip my thing to the next thing. Right, let's listen.
So it's complicated, but levelling up starts with education. It's the foundation stone. So yeah, there's more building blocks, but it's hard to do levelling up unless you really get to the educational inequalities we've got and have a holistic plan for fixing them. And that's what I think we need to promise ourselves coming out of COVID, that we will come back to this issue that was already there of educational inequalities. And we need to promise ourselves that now we are actually going to fix it.
Just going back to what you were saying there about education, being a part of a much bigger picture, and also just picking up on what you were saying about, those great experiences to develop yourself. And I wanted to touch on your own childhood and the experiences that you had. We talk at Children's University about the fact that by the time a child turns 18, they will have only spent around about 9% of their waking life in a classroom. And I remember that statistic coming from my daughter's head teacher when she was about to start primary school, and it just blew me away completely, and it's really stuck with me. So, we're very focused on the fact that 91% of a child's time is actually spent outside of a classroom, and therefore, there are huge opportunities there for learning anywhere at any time and anyhow.
So you're completely right, Helen. I think all this stuff really matters. And
so a clip there of the series 2, which was outside of conference and interviewing figureheads and experts and influencers in the social mobility and future of education realm. And you're Liam, I'm going to come to you actually. Was it a difficult process to start a podcast?
I want to say no. I don't want this to turn into just an advert for you and for Mike Media.
No, please, yes. Please.
Although, we know what is we're here for that. I think it's really been quite easy for us, because I think, we've talked about how we came to this idea and how we wanted to do it. And I think one of the things that made that second series so much easier to make was because we had a bank of episodes under our belt, so you can easily go, well, this is what we're doing, and look at these 6 episodes, look at what these people are saying, and it then kind of grows itself. So once we have that under our belt, it was a lot easier to kind of get people on board, and ultimately it's a conversation. That's all it is. And I think working in any kind of organization like ours, where you've got a mission and you're trying to make change, you always have these meetings, and anecdotally you say, I was speaking to so and so about this, and everything is just tiny conversations that lead things forward. And I think having these big conversations and being able to make them public, it kind of feels like you're speeding things up a bit, because you're able to kind of reference these conversations a bit more publicly and with a bit more clout and credibility. And I think as we've done that, the podcast has kind of grown because of that. We've been able to use each episode as a stepping stone to the next. So it's not been too difficult to make in that sense.
And it was relatively easy to engage people in those conversations, wasn't it? I think once we'd got those few under our belt from the conference, we were able to go out to people and say, look, we've done these, and we'd like to do one with you. It would just be a conversation piece, etc. And people were really willing to do it, I think, from memory.
And also, you're not reinventing the wheel, because you're the experts on this stuff, aren't you? Like, you're not having to learn anything new, and that's another way of making it easy, is that talk about stuff that which you are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was, and also COVID, I suppose, provided rich material, didn't it, around education? There were so many conversations happening, and people were so keen to talk about the impact that it was having and the light that it had shone on educational inequalities and things like that. So people were really willing to have conversations. And I think, I hope going forward in terms of, continuing with our podcast series. There is rich pickings in terms of what's happening politically, in terms of education, still on the back of the pandemic, cost of living crisis, all that. There's so much that is just relevant in the education space that I think lots of people want to talk about this stuff, and so I'm pretty certain we'll carry on doing more podcasts which are continue to be as relevant as the initial ones were.
And I'm much like the educational sphere and social mobility conversations are changing, and also your podcast is not just interviews with other people as well. You've used it as a mouthpiece for children's university opinions and thinkings as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I remember being sat in a room with you once, lots of soundproofing, and just being asked to read something that I'd written over and over again.
Can we make it sound a little bit more complicated? Like you were just sat in a room.
It's very exciting. It was a really snazzy soundproof room. But it's. I think when we've produced blogs and things, I think we've then turned some of those into podcasts, haven't we? Just as a kind of, people like to receive information in different ways, don't they? It gives a bit more life and, vavavoom, doesn't it, to the written word.
Repurposing your content.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though it is just my voice droning on.
Hey, don't play yourself down like that. Liam, you're on a series break at the minute, but what's been the impact of having a podcast?
I think credibility is the big thing. I think for us as an organisation, like Helen said before, we're in the process of taking, what we offer for children, and we're kind of going digital, because digital allows us to sort of scale what we do. So it's been a very kind of traditional paper-based program for children's university, and digital technology just allows us to sort of scale that. It makes growth a lot easier, and I think that's all we're doing with the podcast as well. Is it makes scaling our comms that much easier. It's just using technology that, I want to say new technology, there's lots of new platforms out there, but it's just audio. It's just conversations. It's not, like you say, it's not reinventing the wheel, but it's using the way that people listen to audio as a way to scale our message. And that fits alongside while we're, using digital technology to scale our impact with kids. So it all fits the same thing. And in the same way that we need to be doing things digitally with young people today in order to remain relevant and, an organisation that people will engage with, because that's the way the world is going. And it's exactly the same with podcasting. Gone are the days of charities just writing a press release and sending it out. It's about getting people to hear our message and to get that out there. So I think credibility is the big impact for us. I'm going to throw that one over to Helen. Does that sound accurate to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say credibility and visibility, and then I was trying to think what's the hearing equivalent of visibility. I was trying to think what is the snazzy word that, but I don't know. Audibility or something. I don't know, something.
Or an audible visibility.
Maybe. Yeah, it is that. I think it is that. But it's also there's an element of kind of gravitas to this as well, which I suppose fits with the credibility element. And it is what you were saying earlier, Vic. It's not just us going, we're Children's University, we're brilliant, we're great. Everybody get engaged in, what we're talking about. It is us having serious conversations about, the issues that impact this sort of stuff with some big players out there in the political landscape, academic landscape, and so it's not just us, I was going to say being in an echo chamber, but you're always in an echo chamber, aren't you, if you're all discussing the same thing? Maybe that's our next challenge, is how do we branch out of the education echo chamber and
influence
that's beyond that.
That's the challenge.
Maybe.
No, it's really refreshing to hear, and it's really great to work with you because you get the content, you get podcasting, you get that it's not an advert for your services, but it is. But you can do it in a clever way, in an interesting way. And there's also that signposting piece that you mentioned earlier, in that it's there now forever and ever and ever. And you can use it to, again, in your meetings, or if people are inquiring about Children's University, well, why don't you have a listen to Saeed? And that's the essence. This is why we exist. So, again, it's multi-purpose as well, aren't they? So if there's any not-for-profits listening today or watching, as you know what, this is really strange to me because I don't really do video, I only do audio. So if there's anyone watching today, our lovely viewer, do you have any advice for other charities who are looking to start a podcast but think, there's no way I can compete with all the big people out there?
I'm going to let Liam just handle that one.
No, I think for me, there's two things here. And as soon as I've said there's two things, I've forgotten what both of them are. It's always the way. No, I think for us, in terms of content, if you as an individual find that you go home and talk about work, not in the way that everyone talks about work, but if you talk about what you're doing as an organization in a way that is passionate, then people will be keen to hear about that passion. It's, if you're interested in what you do, and it's important, as most not-for-profits are, doing good work. As you say, you work with good eggs. If you're doing good stuff, people are going to want to hear about it. And the other thing I'd say is, I think, you're unlikely to be a not-for-profit that just comes out with the next, This American Life or Serial. You're not going to get a huge audience, but that doesn't really matter, because as long as you get the audience that you want and that you need, that's what it's about. I think we've always been quite realistic about our audience size. We're not out there to get thousands and thousands and thousands of people chatting and there's a new episode of Children's University Live out. It's trending on Twitter.
Let's rush home and listen.
That's never going to happen. And I think we're realistic about that. But I think the fact is you've got content that's in a medium that you can get to the right people. And if that right person is, as Helen says, just following a meeting, just saying, here, listen to this on your way home, that is really, really useful. That's a really useful thing to have. And so being realistic about your audience and just going, well, we've got this passion, we've got this story, and we want to get it to the right people. If the right people is not thousands and thousands of people, it doesn't really matter. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, just picking up on what Liam said, I'm really glad you said that, because it spots some thoughts in my brain. I think, people who work in the non-profit arena are really, really passionate about what they do. You don't work for a charity unless you're absolutely passionate about that cause. There are 1,000,001 jobs out there that you could go and do and probably get, a lot better paid for. But you are absolutely passionate about what you do and the cause that you work for. And I think in terms of that passion, people have a lot to say. And I think we as a team, and I'm sure this happens in loads and loads of non-profits, we are constantly, on Slack to each other, forwarding each other things from Twitter and different things. And I'm notorious for that. So I was terrible before we started doing podcasts. I would sit on the train going home and I would read something and I would get really angry about it. And I would literally send Liam a message ranting about it. Or by the time I'd got into work, I would have written a whole piece about something that I'd read or something that I'd watched or something and got angry about it or got really, really passionate about it. And that then turned into me doing that and sending things to Liam, from my phone on the train. And by the time I got into work, Liam would go, okay, I've turned that into a blog. And that then became, let's turn that into a podcast. So I remember there was a fantastic program on TV a few years ago, I think, called The Mighty Red Car, and it was about a group of young people growing up in Redcar, a place where they didn't really have a lot of opportunities in terms of education or employment, as was shown by way of this program. Brilliant soundtrack, by the way. Find it on Spotify, The Mighty Redcar, fantastic kind of 80s soundtrack. But it was an amazing program, and I would watch things like that, and then by the time poor Liam arrived in work the following morning, he'd got a long email or a massive WhatsApp message from me just going, oh my God, I've watched this program and this relates to this and this relates to this and it's made me think about this. And I think if you are doing that as a CEO of a nonprofit, or somebody within your organization is doing that, and people will be doing that routinely because of the passion that they have about what they do, then take the opportunity to turn that into different forms of communication, and a lot of that works really, really well as a podcast. And if you're then carrying that passion into having a passionate cause-related conversation with somebody out there who's feeling exactly as you are, then that really works well as a podcast.
What a brilliant bit of advice for content generation and getting some content ideas.
Get angry. Use that.
I absolutely
That's why most
love
people
it.
work in charities, isn't it? They're angry about some form of inequality or some issue, and they want to make a difference. So it feeds kind of audio visual comms really, really well. Amazing,
Brilliant. And that's some of the sound bites. These sound bites from this Get the Mic Live. I'm going to turn it, we might not get any, but I want to turn it over to people that are listening live, and in the comments you can ask a question, and that will come to us. We can't reply via text via this software, but we can reply verbally. If you haven't got a question now to pose to Helen or Liam, then tough. But if you've not got a question now, then maybe when this goes up on YouTube in a couple of weeks' time, then you can pop a question underneath and we can get it to them. Just want to set the context for where we're listening from today. So I'm in East Manchester. Liam, where are you?
I'm in central Manchester, just by Piccadilly Station.
And Helen, whereabouts are you in the world?
I'm at home in South Cheshire, so not far from Crewe.
So we're all joined virtually, and by the very nature of joining things virtually, how am I going to say this? A very nature of office design. Some clever sausage.
I know what you're going to say.
Some clever sausage at Liam's office decided to put the soundproof booth next to the toilet. So every so often you can hear people going, wash and drying their hands. This is live streaming, guys. This is what happens. So well done for everyone in Liam's office being very hygienic. Tell them from me, thank you for washing their hands. We've got Anne Morgan commenting from LinkedIn saying, thank you for a brilliant session, lots to think about. Lucinda Rouse, do you seek engagement with your audience, and how successful have your attempts been, and what's worked?
Oh, Liam.
Great question. We try and post all of our episodes out on Twitter, social media. We try and get engagement and direct conversations there. I think we've had some really good emails from people. But in terms of kind of engaging with our audience, I think that's actually something we could probably do a little bit more, a little bit better. I know a lot of the podcasts I listen to will have kind of questions straight to listeners that will be followed up the next episode. We've never been as regular as we would like with the podcast, and I think that stands in the way a bit. And I think the nature of kind of trying to line up recordings has meant that we've never always been like clearly sequential. This is this episode, this is the next one, which makes things like that quite difficult. So I think we could do more, but in terms of how it is mostly just social media, LinkedIn and Twitter mainly.
And just wondering, and Morgan's just wondering how you do that on socials.
With us, I can't remember the technical term that you use, but we have sound bites for each episode that are overplayed, that are played over a graphic of the episode artwork. And you're going to tell me what that's called, Vic.
They're called audiograms, and there's lots of software you can use to create those. But the one of my favorite bits of software is an app called, it's a website called Headliner, headliner.app. And you give them the audio. Well, you give the robot the audio, and you give the robot a graphic, and it spits out an audiogram that you can then upload to social media.
There we go. So the audiogram is a brilliant way of just getting out a bit like the clips Vic was playing earlier in this broadcast. It's a great way of getting out snippets of the episode. But also, I think one of the things for us is it's about, not to sound too cynical, but I think piggybacking off your guests' audiences as well. I think we're having conversations with really kind of credible, interesting people, and they, by their nature, have large followings. So it's about making things easy for them to share, making sure that they have access to the audiograms.
Audiograms, yeah.
Yeah. Making sure that they have access to the audiograms, pre-written tweets, things like that. Just making sure that.
I was just going to pick up on that in terms of engaging with our audience. We've continued to engage with our speakers that we've had on podcasts. So, when we've done reports or we've responded to government inquiries and various things like that, we've actually kept that kind of door open with our speakers. So we've been able to send them things, and they've then shared, things from Children's University, and so that's been really beneficial for us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your questions, Lucinda and Anne. And is there anything else you would like to talk about in regards to your podcast, guys? Liam?
No, I think the only thing that came to mind before was talking about passion. I think as an organisation, there's a lot of opportunities to get your message out there and to get your story out there. And I think that the great thing about podcasts is it's a kind of free space where you can almost put out the answers to questions that no one's actually asked you. So you quite often have funders asking you, or how do you do this? How do you do that? And you might find yourself answering the same questions for different people all the time. But there are certain things that really get you passionate, or you've got really strong thoughts on that no one's ever asked you about. And I think that's where having something like a podcast is a great way to go, actually, here's what I think about this. Thanks for not asking. But it's great to kind of have that space. And I think, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but in every episode, there's always something that I hear Helen ask the speaker that I know we've had conversations about and she's got strong thoughts on. But you're never going to get those answers and thoughts and questions out there unless we had the podcast and the opportunity to just sit there and talk to someone for half hour, 45 minutes.
Fabulous. Another benefit of having a podcast. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for joining us on the very first Grab the Mic Live. So many nuggets of golden advice, and you two are bloody awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, we think you're awesome too. Thank you for allowing us to be the guinea pigs.
I think it's got all right. I think it's all right. So if you have enjoyed watching this, do me one favor, will you share it with one person who you know will find this useful? This whole thing will be available to watch again on the Mike Media YouTube channel in a few weeks' time, possibly with a blog post. And you can find out more about what we are doing at Mike Media by following our LinkedIn page if you're watching on LinkedIn, or on Twitter, on our website, mikemedia.co.uk. And next time, I'm going to wow you with some more graphics right now. This is what's happening next week. We have got Legacy Fundraising Chat. We've got Sanita Gudu from Persuasion Consultancy. chatting to me about how she launched her podcast in less than 4 months. Bananas. That's Tuesday, the 20th of September, the same place where you're watching this now, 12:15. And finally, can I just say a massive thank you again to Liam and Helen. And that's it from us. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.